I think you said 145.
I didn't see it. Sorry.
I did. I didn't see it.
Oh, oh, it said he'll do 145. That's fine.
All right, let's do this.
Mr. C can start up then.
Thank you for keeping it tuned to Smooth 98.1. This is your love music, love live station on a Tuesday morning, 29th day of April 2025. It's 31 minutes past 7 a.m. My name is Ayokunmi, and it is that time to take a look at the stories making the rounds in the papers, the headlines, the major issues, the hot button topics. This is where we have discussions about them. This is where we get analysis and your contributions, your thoughts, they mean the world to us, and you'll be sharing them with us as well this Tuesday morning on Freshly Pressed. Welcome once again. If you're just tuning in for the first time, you are definitely in the right place. So all you need to do is to keep it tuned, number one. Number two, send your messages in to us, your opinions. The WhatsApp number is 0809 444 0981. 0809 444 981. That is the WhatsApp number. Please, please, please keep those messages concise, keep them clear, keep them clean as well. I know that we're feeling all sorts of emotions at the moment, and sometimes the stories could get us feeling some type of way, but let's just try to keep our emotions in check. And that translates into the messages that we send so we don't get into any sort of trouble along the way. All right, joining me this morning for analysis. Well, it's 1A and 2C's in the studio, Mr. C, and of course, Chibuzor joining me on Freshly Pressed. Good morning to you, gentlemen.
Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Lagos. Good morning, Mr. C. Nice to have you here on a Tuesday.
Good morning, Naya. Good morning, Chibuzor. Good morning, Lagos.
Indeed, thank you so much, Mr. C, for joining us on a Tuesday morning. Chibuzor, let's begin our journey into the stories in the Daily Trust. Oh, before I do that, for everyone out there, you can join us on YouTube as well. We're streaming at Smooth 981 FM Lagos. Smooth 981 FM Lagos. Join us there and leave your comments in the chat box. Okay, into the Daily Trust we go, and this has to do with matters of education, and this is actually important because we more or less discussed this issue yesterday, and we have more or less an update now. Um, okay, let me see here. Okay, I'll have to take a pause on that particular. Let me see. Okay, sorry, I had to scroll all the way down.
To get the story.
Yeah, to get the
Yeah.
story because I kind of put everything here together. Now, the Minister of Education, that's Tunji Alausa, he has more or less said that WAEC and NECO by 2026 have to adopt the full CBT model for their examinations. And he has applauded JAM for their conduct of the 2025 UTME examination. Now, he stated this during an inspection of the ongoing Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examination by the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board, JAM, after visiting some of the centers in Abuja on Monday. Now, Dr. Alausa noted that if JAM could successfully conduct CBT exams for over 2.2 million candidates nationwide, WAEC and NECO, which handles slightly fewer numbers, should also be able to replicate the same feat without any difficulty. He, however, expressed satisfaction with the conduct of the ongoing UTME and commended the high level of coordination, transparency, and integrity demonstrated by the board, describing the examination process as meeting international standards and being almost foolproof against malpractice. That is one of the things that actually drew me to this particular story. And I'm just wondering if the Minister for Education is living in a different multiverse or a parallel universe, because there were a lot of issues concerning the TME exams, and we actually discussed this yesterday. Now, looking at those problems, shouldn't the focus actually be on sorting out all those kinks before saying, oh, these other bodies need to move to a full CBT model? I mean,
Okay. Looking at the story out, I was going to jump on the same emotion as when I first saw the headline. I had to just take a step back and think about this. So the minister, as many what I call it a politician or technocrat in this instance, has come out to give himself a pat on the back. And the guys that work with him, or the agent, because yeah, Jam one way or the other work with him. He pat on the back and giving themselves a thumbs up. in doing any success, so when I look at that, I say in putting together any successful project, you look at both sides. You look at all stakeholders who have participated in that project and say, what is their takeaway from that project? So we had the UTMEs over the weekend, apart from JAM who organized the event or the exams, you had the minister who went to some few selected centers, obviously within his own catchment area. And, it's not hard to predict which centers he would go to because given the way government works, there are several other centers spread across the entire length and breadth of this country. So obviously you cannot have a full view of what is happening across board. And I'm not saying this to say anything against how JAMB has put the exam together. I think, and when I made reference to the fact that there are several stakeholders in every event, is that also that we've only listened to one side, or the minister has only taken into consideration one side at this point, and he's based his success on the fact that JAMB has put it together, and him as the person in charge who has gone to some of these centers has said that, oh, everything is fine. But like you said, we've heard several other complaints about timing of the exams, logistics in some places, early or late arrival of staff in particular places. And those are things that we need to consider because of obviously, I think when JAM needs to consider going forward for the future exams because let's not lie to ourselves, Nigeria isn't perfect, especially when has to do with logistics. Those challenges, especially when you want to start an exam by 8, I expect you to be there by 6:30. There are several reasons why, not everybody is going to have a parent to take them to write exams, especially these days where JAMB and the organizing bodies have streamlined, a specific age. So these guys are supposed to be adults or near adults to be able to go to the exams themselves. Not everybody's going to be able to leave their houses at whatever time to be able to make an exam center at 6:30. Especially if, because I have a personal case, somebody told me, you put somewhere, they were staying in Ogun State and where they were placed, the proximity of their where they were living to the center that they were placed in was so far apart that they had to go and stay they had to do for a relative that they had to stay in their house overnight. And this relative had to wake up first thing in the morning to make sure they got to the center on time. So if you are not, positioned in that kind of way, you don't have those kind of people to help you, what happens to the candidate? Yes, it's one. On the other hand, it's one thing that the minister says, okay, they have lesser numbers. The other big factor when it comes to WAEC and NECO is that WAEC and NECO exams don't happen in one day. They happen over a series of days. So it's not just about making everything happen, in one day and one drop. You have all sorts of logistics. You have to work with the schools when it comes to WAEC. The schools have to have the facilities to support it. So we speak to the larger problem of education. So while it's good to set a target, I'm not saying that they should set targets. I would like that those CBT, the equipment that the guys who use for CBT exams will not just arrive there on the day of the exam. That the students would actually have those computers and whatever facilities they need to be able to take those classes, which I know do not exist in most of the schools in Nigeria today, for an extended period of time before they finally have to use it on exam day. And they have the power that you have the power across all the schools over that period of time to ensure that they don't miss any of their exams, they don't have any issues around writing the exams.
Right.
Everything's on time. So it's a much bigger project than what has happened in JAM. But hey, the minister is right to give kudos to his people for putting something together, but you also need to listen to the other side and understand what are the things that they didn't get right. And some of the end of the story says that okay, they're trying to get feedback. And I do hope they really listen to the feedback and make plans. And I do not understand why you have to have people sitting by 6:30 and start the exam by 8 o'clock. But maybe they have their own reasons. But for me, I still try to think about that. I was trying to recollect when I sat for JAM if I was there at 8 o'clock. I think it was 9. I'm not sure. But that's what it is. We need to see, like he's pointed out, there's always room for continuous improvement.
Definitely.
But we also need to put things in perspective. We need to plan properly, and they need to be funded properly to get to those points. And I hope that it's not just funding for the examination to write the exam, but funding so that those students can get educated in a way that they get prepared for the exam long before they write it.
Indeed.
Okay, so quickly, just two thoughts. One, I do not believe Nigeria is ripe yet for the full option of the CBT exams because We've been hearing cases of students midway through the exams, the power supply to the school goes down, there's a generator, public power, and doesn't crack on. What happens to students like that? Then, more importantly, I think we continue to major in the minors. This is a school-based exam comprising a lot of topics, a lot of questions, and they want immediate implementation. We're crying out for electoral reform. Allow people to vote electronically from the comfort of their homes. You reduce the incidence of violence on election days, and they're playing the ostrich with it, head deep inside the sand. Let's continue around.
Perhaps to see, let's get into the Guardian and talk about this particular matter. Now, Nigeria needs to brace up for about a 150% rise in the cost of solar installations. Now, the slowdown in the energy transition and an increase in electricity challenges as the federal government finalizes plans to ban the importation of said solar panels. Now, this could worsen the already high energy poverty and increase the cost of doing business as an increasing number of small businesses switch to renewables to reduce the cost of energy consumption. We've had a conversation about this a couple of weeks ago, not too long ago, talking about the possibility of solar panel importation, being banned in order to boost local manufacturing. And so we also talked about not putting the cart before the horse. Yes, it's all well and good to manufacture here, to source everything locally and so on and so forth. But you should be able to crawl before you can walk or before you can run. Now, this report has come out, and this is a possibility if that goes forward.
Anyway, thank you very much. This is another classic example of Nigeria being explained to you and you not understanding it. Now, there are several local plants that are being set up to manufacture locally solar panels, right? But I'm not aware any of them is 100%.
Mr. C, your audio is going in and out, like skipping in and out.
Is it now? Is that it now?
It's still a bit iffy.
Is it now?
Carry on first. Let's see if it actually has changed.
Okay, so what I was saying is that we have a number of local plants that is it now?
It's still going in and out.
Let's resort to the next three, then sort out.
Okay, no problems, Chibuzor. Let's take a look at the next story here, while Mr. C sorts out his issues technically, and we're going to take a walk into the Premium Times newspaper, where this one says the Nigerian government has expanded the annual enrollment quota for nursing students from 28,000 to 115,000 within 2 years to strengthen the country's healthcare and education sectors. That's a very big jump here. The Minister of Education, Olatunji Alausa, in a statement signed by the ministry spokesperson Folashade Borio, said the government surpassed its initial target of enrolling 110,000 students annually into nursing programs. Now, the minister attributed the achievements to collaboration between the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Health and Social Welfare, led by coordinating minister Mohammed Hate. What do you think about this particular one? I mean, looking at the numbers here, bearing in mind that we have such a huge deficit in the health sector.
So to put in perspective the deficit that we have today, and it's part of this story, if you compare the nurse to patient ratio, as of 2023, we had 1 to 1,600, which is, if you compare to the World Health Organization's recommended 1 to 300 ratio, you have about ×5. So your typical, what it says is basically your typical nurse in Nigeria is responding or dealing with at least 4 to 5 times more patients than your typical nurse in Scandinavia, any of the countries that reach up to the standards. So that's where we are today, which means obviously healthcare issues. And unfortunately, we're not just looking at just about the nurses. So while we are streamlining to the nurses in this case, this is reflective of the entire healthcare industry. I would even think that the ratios might be worse when you look at doctors because we typically, at least in my experience, you typically tend to have more nurses in the hospitals than the doctors. So you probably have a worse ratio when you look at doctors. Now, what's the importance of this? And there's a lot of it attributed to this. Um, the major issue that obviously everybody knows we've experienced over the last 4 or 5 years across every sector in Nigeria. It's just that the healthcare sector has taken a bigger hit. Has been the jackpot into basically people leaving the country largely for economic reasons, or a lot of them for economic reasons. A lot of them also because they actually love what they're doing and having to deal with the limitations and the frustrations of working with a system where they struggle to make anything work has become too frustrating for them to continue taking. So they decided to look for where they can, work in more conducive environments. Now, those are the things those are the problems on the table. So in trying to when you try to solve problems, you typically look at what are the root causes. You try to do root cause analysis. You try and look at various options, to solve the problem. So I think this is one of the, when you have those boards and you're trying to put ideas together, this is one of the ideas, which is trying to get more nurses into the system, trying to enroll more, and hoping that that pipeline delivers over a course of years, because obviously it's not an immediate result thing, because these nurses have to go to training, and have to come out and have to feed into that system. So it will take a while to see the impact of that. But then now there still comes this question: will these guys stay after they are done?
That's exactly where I was going to. It's one thing to bring them in, another thing to get them to stay.
Will they stay after they're done? And it's not, like there's the governor of Enugu State who is pleading with them and saying, "Oh, they should." The graduates, I think, he was talking to recently graduated students and was appealing to them to stay instead of leaving the country. I when I think about it, I juxtapose it with something that made the rounds. I think was it last week or 2 weeks ago when it was said that some man of God was talking about the cost of medical education here as against out there. And I understand that there were nuances to what he said, but if we go back to the same thing, if we look at Nigeria as an entity who is making an investment into its citizens' lives. Now, it's not enough to say that, oh, it's like, you have this, I'm going to digress. You have this typical tale when a young man meets this fine girl who is probably in secondary school and he decides to groom her by investing into her education and sending her. And when she goes out of university, he's still a trader in some shop. And the baby says, I can't marry this guy again because I've seen bigger fish. And he moves on. Everybody gets annoyed that, oh, after her investment, he's abandoning her. But that's what's typically happening. There's a reason why she cannot continue that relationship is that she has grown bigger than that relationship. She needs a lot more than what you're offering at the moment. In this case, it's both material in the case of Nigeria. The nurses need a lot more in terms of their wages. They need a lot more in terms of their working conditions. They want the hospitals to work. They don't see I don't envy anybody who's a doctor, not a doctor, because of what you have to face, the mortality rates you have to face, the avoidable mortalities you have to face in your typical Nigerian hospital or your Nigerian system. It's not to frustrate people when you know that you can solve the problem. So a lot of them, not just for their financial peace, but also for their mental peace, will check out. How does the government think or plan on solving this problem? Because there's a lot about appealing to people, going to go and meet their regulatory bodies to hold back their certificates and all sorts of things that they're trying to do. But what are we doing? What is the long-term plan that is evident to everybody within the sector that this is what we are doing to improve the working conditions across board over the next 10 years?
Well, that is the million-naira question. I mean, can't say dollars, not what we spend here in Nigeria. But thank you for sharing those thoughts there. Chibuzor, Mr. C, you're back with us.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
We can. Well, I guess we'll make the best of the audio if he decides to go in and out.
Okay. So just add what Chibo was saying. Very clearly, I'm surprised that they've been able to increase the number of entrants. Does suggest lowering the standards to get in? And if indeed they're lowering the standards, what that portend long-term for Nigeria? These are just questions that we need to consider very critically.
All right. Okay. So, Mr. C, let's go back to what we were talking about earlier on concerning the
So
solar panels.
Yeah, those. So we have a number of plants coming up in Lagos, Nasarawa, Enugu that will produce solar panels locally, right? And we are hearing talk of a possible which lead to an increase of about 150% in the cost of acquiring these solar panels. Now, my question is because of time. Why are we considering a ban on imports for solar panels, but in the oil and gas industry, where we have a local refinery with massive capacity, we're still permitting imports? Double standard here. And again, if Nigeria explained to you and you did it the first time, it was not explained properly. Because and then two, these low plants, are they all stream? I don't think the answer is in the affirmative. Even when they fully come on stream, two questions arise. Can they satisfy local demand? Question number one. What will be the quality of the things they produce? We are supposed to be operating a free market. That means everybody competes. The person or person with the best quality win out at the end of the day.
All right, let me take a message or two before we get
to. Can I quickly chop into that?
All right, Chibuzor.
Sorry. So, like a lot of what we see in that story is just reflective of how we think in Nigeria most times. I think I shared this with you. I think 2 years, was it last year? I went tried to get a solar, I think 5 kV, and I got a quote of 5 point something million to deliver that. And I think about how the average Nigerian, is with the ban C issues, how they're able to do that. And for me, whenever we think about bans, one of the things that was mentioned in the story was the formation of a cartel or whatever. And at times, most times, it appears to be like a group of guys got together about drinks and decided that want to do business somewhere, but we need you to ensure that we have guaranteed returns. So we go and want to ban something. We need to build capacity before we start doing things. There's a genuine reason why the government is trying to, reduce the cost of reduce the amount of forex spent. And that's because obviously we have limited forex to use. But we need to look at the solutions and look at the impact of the solutions long term, not just short term, and try and sort that out.
Right, you are. All right, Shum Odessa from Surulere on WhatsApp says, I'm not against CBT for WAEC and NECO as long as the infrastructure and training for stakeholders are available. Internally, though, how many people in the ministry itself are tech savvy? Good question. Who was talking to us? Oluwaseyi says, is this a joke or political speak? Nigeria doesn't have the infrastructure to run WAEC and NECO through CBT. These exams go on for weeks at a time. Where's the power? Is the government going to provide reliable solar power or generators for the hundreds of secondary schools scattered across the country for about 3 months of the year? Mind you, many of these schools don't even have functioning labs, libraries, enough classrooms. Some of these schools don't even have enough teachers. Some would pass better as pigsties than schools. Ouch. Let's not run faster than our shadows, I beg. Sorry that my rants are long. I beg. I had to translate that into English, but actually, I get your point. Thank you very, very, very much. Cisco Delgado says, Chibuzor, CBT exams are not testing the microphone like JAM is doing presently. I have said it that JAM is not yet ripe for such online exams. If these candidates can't do it from the comforts of their homes, right? Cisco said this yesterday as well. Small steps. All right, Mr. C, let's step into the Daily Trust. Let's talk about the EFCC. Yes, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. Now, it is yet to release the reports of its investigations into the alleged fraud cases involving former ministers of humanitarian affairs, disaster management, and social development, in the persons of Shadia Umar Farouk and Betta Edu. Now, the investigations, which were launched about 15 months ago, also involved a former coordinator of the National Social Investment Program Agency, that's INSIPA, Halima Shehu, and a contractor, James Okwete. Now, this is just as the EFCC said that the investigations were still ongoing.
This is just completely ridiculous, right? So, in one breath, the EFCC suggests investigation has only after 15 calendar months. In another breath, they say they've recovered 30 billion naira from the suspects identified in the story. Now, the question is, if you say that money was returned by individuals you allege committed offenses, why are you not charging them on return of money? Because what that simply says, those monies never earned legitimately in the first place. What further investigation do you need with regard to that particular portion of the matter? When they say it's all investigations ongoing, you just sit back and you laugh. Because it's the same commission that goes to town dealing with tales of the exploit against young Nigerians who engage in scams and the like. Now, I'm not endorsing any of those scams, but we all know that is just the tip of the iceberg. Real issue here is that second, the general impression is if you commit monumental heists involving the treasury, national or national level, nothing will happen to you long term. Even if you go to jail, you will get a pardon. That's the race you were confronting. So get all the talk about the investigation or if they continue on to the competitors, that's business. The truth of the matter is they show no inclination to work diligently, follows matter at the end. So we support governors who finished terms of office in 2007, that is 18 years ago, and the cases are still in court. What means is someone who was born in 2007 is now eligible to vote. Let that sink. Next.
2007. Yes, indeed. That is 18 years ago, or still having these conversations. And the funny thing about many of these cases is that everything just goes quiet and everybody just seems to forget that anything actually is going on 15 months ago. That is quite a bit of time. And really, nothing has been achieved. Sad state of affairs that we find ourselves in. Let me just squeeze this in very, very quickly here. I know time is against us. This is in the punch. It has to do with agriculture. We've talked about agriculture quite a little bit. Now, the Minister of Agriculture and Food Security, Abubakar Kari, has said that Nigeria currently loses 45% of its 3.9 million tons to tomato harvest, to post-harvest waste and supply chain inefficiencies annually. He also highlighted the challenge posed by the country's heavy reliance on tomato paste imports, noting that despite Nigeria's abundant production, it remains the world's largest importer of the products. You can see how is it paradoxical or oxymoronic? I think oxymoronic this particular thing is in one breath. We're talking about serious wastage. In another breath, we're saying we're one of the heaviest importers of said product that we have wastage issues concerning.
So this is one thing this is one whenever I talk about agriculture, is one part I always say that this is where the government needs to focus a lot more on. And it's not just about funding infrastructure, because if you look at the we can talk all about the security issues, all the other external factors into agriculture, but when we look at the internal factors that would directly, obviously security is one thing because you don't have farmers on the farm, they can't produce, but even without the farmers, without the security issues, you still have a lot of production that's still going to waste, right?
Right.
And which is what the minister is referring to today. So imagine when we don't have security issues, how much we actually be generating on those farms. And this is something I've seen regularly. Tomatoes, mangoes, whatever. We're importing a lot of for our fruit juices. We import a lot of stuff to make our fruit juices. But yes, you go to your average market in Benue State or whenever state, you'd see this morning, if you walk into a market there, you probably see the waste from yesterday of fruits rotting, of tomatoes rotting by the side, which we will dispose of. Now, that's where the government typically should come in. That's where the Ministry of Agri should come in. I always struggle when people say that we have too many people in particular ministries. We have people, we probably need more, but guess what? There's no clear idea what they are doing or what they should be doing. Because what we expect to see is that we expect to have all those stuff we learned when we were studying agricultural science in secondary school, agricultural extension officers, agricultural extension facilities, we have storage facilities. How much is the government directly investing or indirectly investing or providing incentives for people to invest in those. And we're not talking about just building large scale in production facilities like what the minister was talking about GB4. I think they were launching one in Kano and Kebbi, and that's where he was making the story in Kebbi State. I think the other day, our favorite Alaji also had his own tomato processing plant that he launched, and he was heralded as the next savior again. We're having pockets of that. We have I think there's one or two in Lagos and stuff like that. But we also need smaller ones that, can even be run by the farming cooperatives as guided by the extension officers.
Mm-hmm.
Helping them to you build facilities that can actually process this stuff or store this stuff before you now start thinking, how do you get them out of the areas to where they need to move to. There's a lot of thought processes that need to go. There needs to be an agricultural plan, the same way you have all sorts of master plans. If there is one I don't know about, so maybe somebody might share it with me and I can get a bit more educated. But we need to have clear-cut plans. Each of the ministers need to be driving this instead of this entire political clapping your hands on the back and clapping for ourselves every time that we're doing. We need to see a lot more action that meets the people at their points of need.
More action that meets the people at their point of need. None of this performative shenanigans that tend to happen on a regular basis. All right, let me round up with your messages very, very quickly here. Ajay Magodo Isheri says, why ban solar panels now when they are not yet being manufactured in the country? This decision will worsen the acute energy crisis being experienced currently. All right, Joseph Menier says, this is just a confirmation of the shenanigans in leadership and how the government seems to love the citizens. Case study, have the Nigerian rice farmers been able to meet up with production? What is the cost of a bag of rice today? Now, the discos are now pushing through individuals who are flying the banning of solar panels importation. At what cost will the companies produce solar panels considering the high bills, the high power bills? May God bless Nigeria. Idimapuza says, the APC is doing wonders. Hungers and sufferings have suddenly disappeared. Insecurity is decimated. Electricity is now available and cheap. All of our refineries are working perfectly, all thanks to this government. No wonder politicians are now rushing to join the APC in the Hurricane Jagaban. It seems like he took lessons from Natasha in writing some satirical material there. But anyways, we need to go. We need to call it a morning. Thank you for all the messages. Thank you so much for joining me, Mr. C, and of course, Chibuzor, this beautiful Tuesday morning.
Thank you very much, Lagos. Thank you very much, Mr. C. Bye, Ayo. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me. Have a great week.
All right, then. Keep it tuned to the Smooth Breakfast on Smooth 98.1. Right here, 8:15, we'll take a walk into the grapevine. It's all about the entertainment stories, the headies, and so much more that we need to talk about.